Hi SmartPak fans! Welcome back to another edition of SmartPak's monthly Ask the Vet video series. I'm SmartPaker Sarah, and I'm here with our staff veterinarian and medical director, Dr. Lydia Gray.
Hello there.
And we are here to answer your questions submitted by riders and horse owners like you, and voted on by you guys as well. So today we'll be doing the top 5 again.
5 more, yep.
And we got some really good ones this time, so let's jump right in.
They're getting harder and harder.
My job stays the same. Yours gets harder.
It does, it does.
So our first one is from Chris via YouTube, and Chris wants to know, a few of the horses at my school have kissing spine. What is it, and how can it be treated? Can they still be ridden? And so kissing spine sounds very cute.
It's not. So kissing spines would be sort of the term that a horse owner would use, a rider. The veterinarians could use dorsal spinous process impingement or overriding dorsal spinous processes. What that means is the vertebrae in your horse's back, they have spinous processes, spikes.
Okay.
They can be anywhere from this long to say this long, and those can override, impinge, touch, kiss. That's where the term comes from. That, as you can imagine, that's very painful when they rub. And so things you might see as a rider, or an owner, a trainer is, one of the worst ones would be bucking. But horses that don't want to canter anymore. Horses that don't even want to be brushed or saddled. They just resist, or they're reluctant to do things they used to do. Veterinarians, when called in to examine, might find things like back pain, stiffness, that sort of thing. So there's not a classic sign associated with it, but you begin to add up those signs and you think, uh-oh, I wonder if something is going on with his dorsal spinous processes. And the spikes. And then you bring the vet in. And so treatment will vary based on the severity of it and what the horse is used for, and finances and that sort of thing. And when there's a lot of different treatments like there are for this, what that means is nothing works great.
Sure.
Because definitely if there's one treatment for something, then that works. But things you see are non-steroidals, like the Bute or the Firocoxib, steroid injections, something called Mesotherapy, where they makes very small and very frequent injections into the mesoderm, the sort of the middle layer of the skin, and it's a pain dampening technique, and that seems very effective. But you might do acupuncture, you might do chiropractic. Rehab is a huge part of this. So you don't just do some sort of treatment, just say muscle relaxants, and then put the horse in a stall or stop riding, whatever, and quit. You do physical therapy, and you do it with very planned, thoughtful, methodical, with the veterinarian's help. And it might be things like hand walking, because movement is really important in healing this, because there's a muscle spasm aspect of it. So hand walking, lunging, not with a hollow back where the spikes might impinge more, but with a lifted, rounded, stretched top line, so that the horse can build muscle and learn to use himself differently. So her question about can they be ridden again, it's hard to say without some diagnostic work, some x-rays, and then see how treatment goes, see how the physical therapy goes, and then you'll know prognosis better. So it's different for every horse.
Different for every, and that makes it tough for every veterinarian too. It's a longer,
it's very
process.
Challenging. This is one of the most challenging diagnostics and treatments there is.
Still, I don't know if I would have, hearing your description, I don't think I would have romanticized it as kissing spines. I probably would have gone like touching spikes, because that sounds like it's more the painful side of things. So we should all try to rename that one. I'm for it. So we had a follow-up question on our February video, which is great.
Exciting.
People are watching, which is really exciting and also makes us a little more nervous. So we had a follow-up question. It was about the best exercise for an overweight horse that she was responding to. And she had a great question. It's Michelle, and she says, how do you actually know if your horse is overweight? Specifically in the case of my horse, not my horse, Michelle's horse. She's ridden 6 days a week and has been consistently for the last 3 years. And so she's fit, But she hears all the time from people, though she says usually not anyone credible like a vet, that her horse is fat based on her aesthetic appearance. That is not something you want to hear.
No, but what I did want to hear was the part about working 6 days a week for 3 years, and so her horse is fit. That's really good. How do you know your horse is overweight? It's pretty easy, and I think we have other videos and articles and pictures and things, but you have to use, we all use this standardized body condition scoring system, and it's called Henneke, Henneke, and it ranges from
showing off.
I was National Spelling Check. It ranges from 1, which is very thin, emaciated, to 9, which is obese. So 5 being the ideal. Okay, so her horse is 6, 7, 8. I can't imagine with that much work that she's a 9. But so start there, and it's something that a person can do, but then have the vet come and do it with you. And so it's nice to keep a journal on your horse and have this body condition score number at like the first of the month or every 2 weeks even. And you can add to that the weight taping, which I think we also have videos on.
I think we do.
That.
I think we do.
Yeah. Maybe the barn field trip too is a good one that talks about that. But record that number in the journal too, because the trends are very, very important. So some of the weight tapes aren't maybe as accurate, but it doesn't matter, because if the same person does it in the same place, in the same way, in the same horse on the first of the month, then that trend is what's important. So if it was like 1,400 on January 1st, and then 1,500 on Feb 1st, and then March 1st was 1,600, that's a definite trend.
Right.
And so you'd want to step in and then talk to your vet and maybe do something about it.
It's nice that the Henneke body condition scoring scale, it lets you have a really objective measure, rather
it's
than
apples
it
to
being
apples.
subjective, where it's like, well, I think that horse is fat and I think that horse looks great.
Which it sounds like she's getting a lot of.
She's getting a lot of like hot or not, which I don't think is what you need when you're trying to manage your horse's health.
Yeah, good.
Our next question is from Jenna and Ginger, and it's also submitted via YouTube comment. And Jenna and Ginger are asking, my horse has a lot of trouble gaining weight. Do you have any tips and tricks? So the opposite situation than we were just in.
Yeah, so did you know I used to work for a horse rescue?
I did.
Okay.
I did know that about you.
So I have a lot of tips and tricks for getting horses to gain weight. The first one is you've got to get the veterinarian out, because there are lots of reasons why a horse might be thin or have trouble maintaining or holding weight that are medical in nature. In fact, I went to a CE yesterday and we talked about one, so I'd forgotten about that one.
What's a CE?
Continuing education.
Thank you.
So it's where vets go to keep up with the latest and greatest and the new things, and one of the trainings was on equine herpes virus, which I know is huge. So you've got to get the vet out. And once you have the all clear, then you look at the diet and you say, am I feeding the right amount? And am I feeding the right, so that's quantity, quality. So some examples are, we like to feed about 2% of a horse's body weight. You like math, right?
I do.
Okay, so we like to feed about 2% of a horse's body weight in forage. So if it's a 1,000-pound horse, putting you on the spot here,
20 pounds.
20 pounds, right. So 20 pounds of hay. And you have to, which means you have to weigh your hay. And you can use a luggage scale, a fish scale, but you put a couple flakes in a hay net and you weigh it. You don't just go, looks good. That's quantity. And then quality, it can't be hay from like 3 years ago and it's brown and dusty. I mean, it should be fresh and good smelling and green and bright. And there's also grain. There's a host of grain choices. Not only companies, brands, but types of grain. And the important thing there is to feed the minimum that's on the bag so that you're getting the vitamins and the minerals and the protein. In this case, you probably also want the calories from the grain. And so there are grains that range from hardly any calories, and they're for the question before, right?
Sure.
And then there's grains that are very, have a lot of calories, very calorie dense, what we call them. And so that's one. But then other tips and tricks are things like feeding more than twice a day. You know, I'd go out to a rescue place and then I'd see a horse in a dry lot and it was thin, and the person's like, well, I just can't get him to gain weight, and I'm thinking that there's no food in front of him. So they have to have food in front of them. And that's why I like, this is gonna sound crazy, I swear I'm not crazy, small whole hay net.
Oh.
right?
Okay.
You didn't see that coming, did you?
Restricting access to food for a horse that's having trouble gaining weight feels like a surprise.
It does, but here's why it works. Because that's how Mother Nature intends horses to eat. Just small amounts all the time. Because that's how their digestive system is made. That like they secrete acid all the time. So these horses, it turns out that the horse that needs to gain weight does so with a small whole hay net because they're eating all the time versus a big meal here that their small 2-gallon stomach can't handle and then a big meal later. But if you keep a small whole hay net in front of them all the time, they're eating all the time. And they don't have these peaks and valleys and spikes and troughs, but food is present all the time. And it's fresh food because it's not trampled on hay. You got to remove those reasons too. What else? Oh, and so there's things like beet pulp, hay cubes, hay pellets, chopped hay is quite tasty, if I say so myself.
Want to know more about that later.
Fat puts weight on some horses. The thing with these is you have to try something for at least 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks is better. Because, again, like I say, every horse is different. So what fat might work in one horse, but it might not work in another horse. So you just try it.
Yeah.
Some horses respond really well to digestive support, things like probiotics and prebiotics, yeast and enzymes. These things all work differently, but the main focus is they help digestive efficiency. Does that make sense?
Yep.
They help the horse do his job of breaking down and absorbing food.
Rather than just passing it right through.
Yeah, they get more they're able to extract more nutrition out of the food they're getting. So, and then I mean, I could go on
and
all
then
day.
you're getting more for your money's worth with what you're paying for hay.
Oh my gosh, but look at also the environment. If you've got a horse that prefers to eat, they're social creatures, right? If you've got a horse that prefers to eat with other horses and then he's not eating because he's alone, that's stressful. He's losing calories, not gaining. Conversely, if you've got a horse that is in a herd but he's low on the pecking order, then he's not getting his fair share. So you have to take a lot into consideration when you've got a horse who's not gaining weight. Why? First the vet, then the quality and quantity of food, and then you keep opening the picture up, the frame wider, and looking at other things.
I have several follow-up questions
Oh,
for
goodness.
you. The first one, so you said try something for at least 2 weeks. Would you recommend for this person, similarly to the person before, keeping that journal of the weight tape and the body condition scoring?
Yeah, I would.
So that you can see trends, and then that way you're objectively evaluating how your horse is responding rather than saying like, I think he feels better this week.
Right, and this is a person too that needs to body condition score and weight tape.
Yeah.
So they have those hard objective numbers in that journal along with things they tried. Because there might be 3, 4, 5 things they have to try to find the one that works, and you don't want to forget what you already did, you know?
Absolutely. Second follow-up question. You mentioned herd pecking order. Is Newman the king of the castle, or is he a little bit of a weenie?
Well, his nickname is Large and in Charge.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, so there used to be a big paddock and all these horses, and then there was one more pile of hay than horses, you know, it's a good way of doing it. He would hoover all the hay, all of it. And then they would all stand there and look around like, well, what do we do now? So
no weight gain problems for Newman.
Oh yes, but we've taken care of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, we have a question from Behind Blue Eyes, and they want to know, the horse I lease always has problems with abscesses. That's a bummer. She goes outside for about 12 hours a day normally, but she's on stall rest because she has another abscess.
Okay.
Bummer. Is there any precaution that this person can take to help prevent more future abscesses?
So I saw this one got posted, and I thought just in case it makes it to the top 5, I'm going to ask Danvers Child, the hoof health consultant for SmartPak, because I don't really feel comfortable answering hoof questions.
But we don't give you the power to downvote questions.
Right. So
for this exact reason.
No, and I had to be ready. But the interesting thing is, and you're going to like follow up a lot on this, he wrote words that I don't even know what they mean. So here we go. He says, if always has problems with abscesses, indicates a recurrent area or spot in the same foot. It's important to have your veterinarian examine your horse to ensure that the abscessation isn't caused by some underlying issue such as a sequestration or keratoma. If the problems are not isolated to a specific foot and are more general or random, then visit with the hoof care provider about what can be done to eliminate capsular distortions that would provide pockets and pathways for bacteria to find entry into the white line. Likewise, you might consider using a topical agent such as Keratex hoof hardener to help regulate the moisture and hydration levels that tend to fluctuate significantly when horses shift environments regularly from turnout to stall.
Now
And
showing
there you
off.
go. I know. So, hit me.
I would have thought sequestration was related to Congress, in my understanding.
And you would be wrong.
I was surprised to hear that.
It just means a walling off, a seclusion. It does mean the same thing, but in this case, we're talking about an infection, liquid, pus, white blood cells, whatever. Yeah.
So the big thing to do is to start with, is it the same foot, same spot, or is it different?
Correct.
And then if it's different, you're managing environment and looking at all those sorts of things. If it's the same spot, you're maybe dealing with something anatomical. And
I think he said for both situations, get help.
Yeah.
So,
Abscess is not a do-it-yourself.
No, I mean, you might care for it yourself, but you got to figure out what the underlying cause is because you need to stop. She needs to stop. That's not fun for anybody.
No, and feet are important.
Yeah,
for horses.
No hoof, no horse, right?
There you go. Riley on YouTube says, I wanted to get my horse off of a sweet feed and was immediately overwhelmed by the amount of choices, as we were just discussing.
Right.
How do you decide on a feed, and what happens when the recommended amount is too much feed at once? How much is too much? How much should I be giving my horse per feeding if he gets fed twice a day? Okay. So knowing nothing about Riley's horse, what would you say?
Well, there were, every sentence in that question was a question.
Yep.
So you're going to have to tell me, keep track of the questions. I think I want to start with how much is too much.
Great.
Because there's math. You can always go back to math.
I'm nervous
again.
again.
No, it's fine. So the rule of thumb for how much can you feed concentrated, grain-wise, at one time, in one meal, is 0.5% of body weight. Okay. So for a 1,000-pound horse, and it's 5 pounds. Yep.
I could have done that one.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to put you on the spot.
I know, I appreciate that.
So we brought this out because this is called a polder, and you buy it at, Bed Bath & Beyond or Amazon or wherever they have kitchen things. It's a kitchen thing. I don't spend much time in the kitchen, but it's a kitchen thing. So what it does is it weighs up to 5 pounds, and you balance it first, and then you add weight in, and you can do it by a pound at a time, and then put it in your bucket, whatever. But we practice with a team to see what 5 pounds looks like, and it's like half this bucket or more. It's a lot of grain, so that's a lot to feed at one time, and it's why we say small meals frequently. So you might feed, if your horse truly has to say, let's do 6 because it's better math, 6 pounds of grain a day because the bag says, then it would be 2 pounds in breakfast, 2 pounds at lunch, and 2 pounds at dinner. That's much better. So that's the amount. So what else was there?
There was how much should I be giving my horse per feeding if he gets fed twice a day? So you covered that. You look at the total amount,
3 and
split
3 would be
half.
good. Yeah.
Sure. And then how do you decide on a feed, and what happens when the recommended amount to feed is too much at once?
Okay, so when the recommended amount is too much at once, you keep dividing it until it gets to be a smaller amount that fits within that 0.5% of body weight at a time. And the reason for that is gastric ulcers and colic, because their digestive systems just are not made to handle concentrates like this. They're made to handle forages. You can feed them as much forage as you want, and because they have to chew it and it goes through slower and it goes to the hindgut to be digested, fermented, and then absorbed, that's all great, but the grain is processed in the stomach and small intestine. It can quickly get overwhelmed.
So the meat of the question, I think, is going to be, how do you decide?
Yeah, and I want to go back to the first questions that, one person had the overweight horse, and one had the underweight horse. So clearly they would purchase different products, right? For the overweight horse, I would look for a ration balancer. And a ration balancer is one that I kind of mentioned, doesn't really add calories. You feed it in about 1 pound or 2 pounds a day. So it's like the horse thinks they're getting something, it makes noise in the bucket, but it's not a lot of volume. And it supplies the vitamins, minerals, and protein that the horse needs. That, combined with their forage, is a complete and balanced diet, but it didn't add calories. Now for the hard keeper, then you might need something that's a bit more calorie dense, and so you would look for, there's categories of feeds that aren't technically sweet feeds, but they provide in addition to the vitamins and minerals and the protein of the ration balancer, they provide calories too. So that's what I would go with on a horse that needs to gain weight. A lot of people like the complete feeds, the senior feeds. Just remember, those are hand grained in a bag. So on the label, the bag, it'll say to provide all the vitamins and minerals and protein, you might need to feed 15, 18, 20 pounds of this.
And so if 5 pounds is here.
Oh, it's like 4 buckets.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so if you're feeding a complete feed, just understand that you're going to have to either feed all that the bag says or supplement it with maybe a multivitamin to bring those nutrient levels up.
Okay.
But some horses do really well on complete feeds. I would not mix feeds. I think that feed companies, when they make feeds, they do a really good job of making a feed for a purpose. But I know people who mix 2, 3, 4 feeds, and I think that gets a little muddy. So choose your feed and then use that journal we talked about and body condition score and weight tape and keep a record of how, like, does your horse even like it?
Right. Never a problem for human.
Never a problem. The cost of it, I mean, and how his weight is doing on it. So if you've got this easy keeper and you put him on something and he gains weight, well, that's not the food for him. And conversely with the hard keeper, if you put him on something and he loses weight, then switch. But switch gradually, because we know grain changes 10 times risk of colic.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I know.
All change is gradual, which can make it hard, because if you're trying it for 2 weeks and you have to make changes in between gradually, like
It's a
everything
long
else with
time.
horses, patience, patience, patience.
Hard.
As a dressage rider, I'm sure you can relate to
I
that.
have oodles of patience.
All right, well, that's all we have for this month's edition, and thank you guys so much for submitting all the questions. We are now accepting questions for next month's video.
Easier questions for next month's video.
Very complicated questions with big words. So we appreciate you guys submitting your questions and watching, and we look forward to seeing what you've got next for us. Use hashtag AskTheVetVideo on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. We will respond to you in all of those places. You can email our fabulous customer care team and send your questions that way. That's customercare@smartpak.com. And if your question is selected and gets voted up to the top 5, you will win a SmartPak gift card, which is very exciting. And we do have a couple of past winners out there. We haven't been able to get you your gift cards yet. So check your direct messages. We unfortunately don't get them, though we do work very hard on these videos and maybe deserve them. So you can check your DMs or your direct messages on YouTube. We've probably reached out to you there to get you your gift cards. And if you aren't able to check those, or you know your question was selected and we just haven't reached out to you, you can email customercare@SmartPak and we'll get forwarded along to the right team and we'll get that on out to you.
We'll find you.
So we'll be accepting questions until April 8th. We cannot wait to hear what you have to say. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you can always stay up to date on the latest videos. And you can check out what else is going on with Ask the Vet, because you do some that are just written answers.
I do.
Not all videos.
I still do those, yes.
And those are at blog.smartpak.com. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a great ride.
See you next time.